Welcome to Failure. I'm Ryan Kavanaugh. This is the place where, as they say, success has many fathers and failure has none. Well, failure has found a father, and you're here with us. And we're very lucky today to have one of my closest friends, one of the world's great producers, the world's great marketers, the world's great showman. And he's truly one of the greatest talents I know. He's one of the main visionaries behind American Idol and producer American Idol and the creator of So You Think You Can Dance, Nigel Lythgoe. Welcome, Nigel.
Thank you. So happy to be on a program called Failure.
I mean, as soon as I thought who could I bring on Failure, I thought Nigel, right?
Great.
Nigel failing. No,
Yeah.
But as we all know, this show it's raw. It's meant to show the world the truth of success, which is in success, success doesn't happen without failure. And Nigel is one of the prime examples of one of the most successful people in his industry, if not the most successful, and one of the greatest talents I know, both creatively and business in that field, and has had his ups and downs. And
a prime example of failure.
Yeah, a prime example of failure. So I was trying to be nice,
Thanks
but I
for
realize in
pointing
this show
that
we
out.
can't be. But
No, please.
You are. And so, Nigel, I think we'll just start. My path, as you know, which is why I'm doing the show, has been, as I always say, it's a ton of failure after failure, and my success are the moments in between learning how not to fail and then back to failing again. And I don't know if you share exactly that, but I know you started in humble beginnings and you had to work really hard to get where you're going and never give up. So can you maybe start and tell us a little bit about just your beginnings? Like, where'd you come from? What were you doing? What was your family like? What made you you?
Well, I come from Liverpool in England. My dad was a dock worker, a longshoreman, I think you call them here. Worked really hard. He was a sergeant major during World War II, wow. And they called him a Little Caesar. So I don't know what that actually means, but he sounded pretty tough. But he was a small man. He was about 5'5", very wiry, I remember, very leathery skin. I mean, Liverpool was the main port for England. It's where the American ships would come in. It was the nearest port to America, right, basically. And he was out in it every single day. And I swore there is no way that I wanted to be a docker. And when I was 11 years of age, I went up to him and said, Dad, I want to learn how to tap dance.
Wow.
And he said, I'm sorry. What?
The longshoreman's here in his
I could have failed right here, at 11. But he said, okay, why? And I told him that I'd seen a movie with Sammy Davis Jr. in, and he was tap dancing. It was Robin and the Seven Hoods, and he actually did a tap dance with a machine gun.
Wow.
And it was just exciting for a kid, I guess. And I thought I'd like to do that. And it was either that or play the drums. And he thought, oh, that's good. you go tap dancing. And I went tap dancing, and I was pretty good at it. And we didn't have a lot of money, but the teacher said, you should do other forms of dance because you're good and you don't have to pay for it. Just keep it to ourselves, but I'll teach you how to dance. And bless her little cotton socks, that's what she did. I became a dancer when I was 18 and took a job in a traveling show. It was a tour of an operetta called The Merry Widow. And I had pink tights on, pink ballet shoes. The tights went right up to my nipples. I had a little yellow bolero jacket with a red beret. I looked like a dancing milkshake. And I swore I am never going to do this again. I could not stand wearing tights. I just couldn't. It was uncomfortable. And thank goodness I got a television job in a group called The Young Generation. It was 15 boys, 15 girls. And it was the first time really that dancers got their names checked. Because before this, dancers were like traveling wallpaper behind a singer.
Sure.
You're just jumping around behind the singer. But here we were given our own lines to say, songs to sing, and it was our own show, the Young Generation show. And it was tremendous. And I did that for 3 years.
Or where was that in London
In
primarily?
BBC television.
Oh, BBC.
Yeah, and we had many shows. They sold 1 million, it was called, the Young Generation show. We were also backup dancers for Cilla Black, Lulu, and all of the stars of the day. After 3 years, the choreographer left and went to ITV, and I was asked to take over the choreography. I was just one of those kids that, you know, I can do that, one of those, you know. And I suddenly realized that I really wasn't capable of doing this. We were doing 7 routines a week, and we were working something like 35 to 40 weeks a year, and it was really killing me. And that was leading up to, I guess, the stress of that, the stress of losing a girlfriend that I was madly in love with, was my first failure. And thank goodness I failed. I was 21 and I tried to commit suicide.
Oh.
And I failed trying to commit suicide, which I'm really grateful I failed for.
I'm happy
you know?
you failed at that too.
At 21.
You just too much pressure?
It was just too much. But I got through it and got back on my feet, got my head right. And I was really successful as a choreographer because it wasn't just about dance steps and dancing. I mean, I've worked with choreographers now that you put a piece of music on and they're sensational. They just move brilliantly. I wasn't that. I was more of a cerebral choreographer. I'd come up with ideas. So comedians wanted me to stage them and come up with ideas for comedians. So it took me on a totally different track, which took me into production, television production, and direction. And moving along very rapidly to, I was 40. I was doing a lot of work in Europe. I was asked to go to East Berlin before the wall came down. So this was
70s?
scary. This
60s?
was 75, 76.
Oh, yeah. You didn't go to East Berlin in 75 or 76. That was a scary place to go.
I had 90 dancers to choreograph in this theater that was just incredible. It was called the Friedrichstadtpalast. And it had this enormous stage, big revolving stage, which would drop down, move to the side. An ice rink would come out of the other side and come up with Katharina Witt, who was the world champion figure skater at the time.
Wow.
East German girl. Gold medalist. That would drop down, and below that, a tank of water with a dolphin in it and a girl swimmer. And the act was the dolphin would take the girl's bra off. It would take 4 or 5 minutes to take this girl's bra off, and she'd swim around, and that was the act. It was an incredible experience because it was scary. I'd walk across Checkpoint Charlie just to go to West Berlin to eat food because I didn't really like the food in East Berlin. It was a very strange, dark place. And steal toilet rolls from out of the bathrooms in these restaurants, because the toilet paper was like emery paper. You know, it was a strange place. But you knew as you were walking from East Berlin to West Berlin that they actually had their gun sights on you. And as you walk into West Berlin, you can see the Americans with their binoculars. Who are you? Okay. So I do this every weekend, and I was there for 2 months. So they knew me. So it was okay.
What an incredible experience.
Another experience. And I looked on it. I wasn't allowed to take any money out of the country. So I had to take porcelain and a fur coat for my wife. The thing was with East Berlin is it gave me a lot of confidence because I didn't speak the language. They didn't speak English. And it gave me a lot of confidence to take on other work that I didn't know if I could do or not.
Can we go back? Because you were saying you skipped ahead, and it's obviously a hard topic, but you tried to commit suicide, you said, when you were 21. And that was your first failure. And it sounds like, you know, you were in what a lot of 20-year-olds would say is success. Like, oh, I'm choreographing this show. It's, you know...
I never felt good enough.
So what
I
was it?
never felt good enough. It was, as I said earlier, it was 7 routines. So you would basically... doing them overnight to walk in the next morning. And don't forget, before this, I was a dancer with the dancers and messed around just as much as the dancers. And now I'm the boss trying to stop them messing around while I'm thinking about what I'm going to do. So it was all uncomfortable. I'd lost friends.
Was it the pressure of work? Was it the pressure of life? Was it the feeling of like an imposter feeling, as they call it? Or what was the...
Well, it was also, I mean, I'd fallen in love with a lady and we split up. And I'd actually, we'd split up because I had this incredible show called 50 Years of Music that the BBC asked me to choreograph. And it was on this particular night on television. And we sat down to watch it together. And I was really proud that she was going to be seeing this. And the telephone rang and it was another guy. And she was on the telephone to this guy for the entire length of the show. And in those days, we didn't have video recordings.
Right.
So she missed the show entirely. And it broke my heart. And she was leaving me for this other guy. And that broke my heart. So there was that mixed with the fact that I wasn't comfortable at work.
It's amazing, and I think we don't, not to harp too much on it, but you know, when we look at where we are in life and what we perceive to be the deepest failures that I mean drove you, and you know, a lot of people get driven to extremes like attempting to, you know, commit suicide at that age, as to what was going through your head as failing.
I think mine was probably much more of emotional blackmail. It was taking a bottle of sleeping pills.
Yep.
You know, if you're going to actually commit suicide, jump off a building, they can't pump that out of you, you know. And when I woke up, my mother had come down from Liverpool and she was sat next to the bed as I came to. And this beautiful nurse was on the other side of the bed, leaning over me. And I checked out her breasts. And I thought, why on earth did I even think of committing suicide?
There's the Nigel in it.
But it was like, you know, my mum was in tears.
But it took that failure for you to pick your ass back up and say, what the hell am I doing? And let's get our shit in order, right?
Yeah.
You're in the hospital.
Yeah.
21 years old. You got a ton of responsibility. This girl's kind of broken your heart. Your inner voice is like, what the fuck did I do? And now you come back with a vengeance, and you're in East Berlin of all places, in Soviet bloc era, choreographing a show with how many dancers?
And I was being followed from the hotel. The hotel was on the corner and the theater was up the street, which I had to walk every day. And I was followed, I realized after the first week, by it was called a Trabant, this little car that would follow me up. And when I came out of the theater, whatever time I came out, it would be there and follow me back to the hotel. And I found out later that it was the Stasi, the East German secret police.
To make sure you weren't like a spy.
That I wasn't going anywhere else, I guess.
Just because you could have been a spy for all they knew. Wow. Yeah. So you're in this, like, I'll call it almost a hellhole, is the way East Berlin has been described to me during Soviet bloc, where you got limited resources. You said, you know, barely have toilet paper and food. And you're choreographing this show under the most extreme circumstances with, how many people? You said 80?
90. 70 girls, 20 boys.
Is that like you were, at that point, did you feel like you had succeeded, or were you kind of just like, where the hell am I, or what did you feel?
Fear. And that was the driver. And fear about communication as well.
Because a lot of people didn't speak English.
Yeah. They were either Russian or East German or other Soviet bloc dancers.
So you were literally choreographing basically 100 people who didn't speak English.
Yeah, I know why you're a failure, because you keep getting all of your figures wrong. You've gone from 90 to 100.
Oh, it was 90. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, you know, math is not my strong. Actually, math is my strong suit, shockingly.
Oh, yeah, it was tough. It was tough. Again, a challenge, and one that I wanted to do, and one that I wanted to face.
So tell us what happened after that. So now you've come off this incredible challenge. Probably feel like you can do anything. And what's next?
I go and do, I move on into comedy and do television shows, producing and directing comedians. A really good impressionist called Bobby Davro, hugely successful show. And we are reenacting pop videos of the time. So we did the Queen video, David Bowie's Space Oddity. And it was great fun. Again, learning a great deal about camera tricks at that time. A thing called color separation overlay came out, CSO, which we know as green screen basically now. And so it was playing with that and having fun with that. to which then leads me to be asked to make an American show called American Gladiators in England. I'm also...
How old are you at this point now?
Going into late 30s, early 40s.
You had little success. You're building your career as a producer. You were already built your career as a choreographer. Now you're getting to be a respected producer, let's call it, in London.
Yep.
And you're taking an English show and making it into a British show, which must feel pretty good, because you'd be asked to take a successful show. And
I'm asked to come over to Los Angeles to meet with Samuel Goldwyn Jr., who invites me to his home. And I'm really awkward to feed.
I've noticed.
So
no fish.
No fish. I do like lamb, and they served lamb, but it must have just been shown the flame. Because it was all red raw. This is in his home, and I have to send it back 3 times to have it just
in his house.
In his house.
So again, I just want people to get the context of this. There was really no studio at the time but MGM. I mean, you had Warner Brothers building and Paramount building. Paramount was on the brink of bankruptcy, and MGM was the studio. It basically controlled this industry. So you were working at MGM. The rest were kind of subpar.
So I'm embarrassed by the very fact I've got to do this. But what I said to him was, because I'd seen the American version here at Universal Studios. And what they did was they'd put up a piece of equipment and shoot 3 or 4 shows on that equipment. So different contestants came out. They had a walk-through audience. So the audience never got to see a show. They'd see maybe 4 games if they stayed there for 2 or 3 hours with numerous contestants, but didn't know who won, who didn't win, who got knocked out. So it felt really uncomfortable. I said, I want to do it as a complete show. And he said, well, the equipment was huge. It was hang tough with rings and the eliminator course. He said, you're going to need a really big place to lay out the equipment. So I took over in England the National Indoor Arena, which was the Olympic Arena in Birmingham. And we laid out all of the equipment. And what we couldn't lay out, it was only a question of wheeling something else out. I used all of the Americana with it from your football games, so that there was music blaring out as different gladiators came on. The Boys Are Back in Town was the, wild thing, and great music. And big foam hands, which we'd never seen in England. So we choreographed the audience. And on the first show, I remember it was a bit like Moses and the Red Sea, because only about 300 people turned up in this 7,000-seat arena. And we would look at the camera shot and this way, and the whole audience would run around and sit behind that camera shot. And now this way, and then all run round to the other side. And we had to literally choreograph the audience. After that first season, it became enormous.
Really?
And we were doing 2 shows a day, 7,000 people in each show.
That's a big
It was
big
enormous.
Show.
And it was so big that we got the very first sponsorship for a television program from Kellogg's Cornflakes.
And at the time, Kellogg's was like one of the biggest brands in the world.
So this was just...
That's like you've made it now. If Kellogg is sponsoring you, you've made it.
Made it.
My life. I'm now in the big leagues.
They're even better. They now ask me to become the boss. They ask me to become the controller of entertainment and comedy at London Weekend Television. This is...
It's like the job.
The job.
So you got Goldwyn, you've got MGM having you in his house, you've got...
We're asked to make the show for America.
Now you're taking the show to America.
We're now making the American show in England.
Amazing. You've changed the way audiences view you. You're filling up 7,000 seats, unheard of. You get this
Greatest thing. I'm there.
First sponsorship. Kellogg's in.
This is it.
You've arrived.
Yeah.
And what happens?
So now I'm doing my first show as the boss. It was the biggest failure that I've ever had in my career. It was another version of Gladiators on ice. And it was called Ice Warriors. And we came up with crazy games of jousting, joust poles, just like, Knights of the Round Table, different ends of the ice rink and charge towards each other with these jousting poles. We had this big sort of clock face with different arms coming off it that you had to jump over or go underneath, that was being spun by these ice warriors, and the contestants had to either jump over them or duck under them or be chopped in half. I mean, it was incredible on paper.
Back in East Berlin.
We did the mythology of it, and we spent so much time with the mythology of it that we didn't really care about the people. And we had the ice master, who was 6'7", who couldn't even stand up on the ice. So we kept him off the ice. My presenter was a lady called Danny Bear, beautiful woman. She's now a realtor in Beverly Hills and being very successful. But at that point, she looked gorgeous. She lied to me and said, "Oh, yes, I'm a great ice skater." And I didn't audition her. She couldn't stand up on the ice.
Oh, no.
So we would sort of, she'd give her a little push and she'd sort of come out, "And now from the ice city of Birmingham." And she was so stiff because she was worried about falling over. That didn't work. The games got taken off us by safety. 3 days before we do the shoot. You can't do that jousting. That's too dangerous.
No.
The jousting, they chopped off the, we lost 3 other games. We had one with a sort of very thick elastic band where you ran away from each other. And whichever one gave up first time, they'd be pulled back and yanked back. Can't do that, it's too dangerous. So we were really short of games. It was just a nightmare to shoot. And the first show went out and got the worst critics ever. And I had to watch as 9 other shows went out every week. And don't forget, I've produced it, I've directed it, I'm the boss.
This is your baby.
It is disaster. And what I learned from it, which was really important that I've applied ever since, is it's not about the games. It's not about anything other than the people. And if you don't know the people, if you don't care for the people, it's like watching a boxing match where you don't really give a shit about who's who.
Right.
It doesn't mean anything. Or a team that, a football team for me, where you don't really know who they are. If you don't care about the team, you don't care about the game.
That's true.
And if you didn't care about the contestants or what were the ice warriors or the gladiators, really, it didn't mean anything. So the show just disappeared, loudly disappeared.
Tell me what that means. So it comes out, it gets terrible critics. You have MGM, you have sponsors, you're the boss. You've got the.
Well, no one else was involved. No other companies were involved. This was LWT and me.
So you're now the head of LWT, which at the time one of the biggest
London
in
Weekend
London.
Television. It was the biggest provider of entertainment shows for ITV.
So, I know for people who don't know, ITV today is still one of the largest owners and production companies of television throughout the world, not just London. So, largest provider in London was your moment, and it fails. And what happened? Tell me about your life, what you were feeling, what was going on around you, what were your friends like?
Well, it wasn't, I mean, I didn't really have any enemies. It was just my friends that hated me at the time.
It's a good way to say it.
And it was, you get in this position and you screw up. What are you going to do about it? Luckily enough, we were making a lot of television programs. And I created 2 or 3 other programs that were being made during this time by other producers, but they were my babies. Right. Record of the Year, My Kind of Music, different programs that I sort of said, make this, do that. A great one called Don't Try This at Home, with dangerous stunts and everything, that were becoming really successful. So they were my babies, but other people had made them and made them well.
Now, had these already come out when the other one failed, or they were in
No, no,
So I
they
wanna
were in the
focus-
process.
I want to go back to before they come out. This show's come out, and do you remember a specific time? Like I remember for me, like I can relate it to a movie, you know, of like one of my first
This
movies.
was 1996.
And do you remember like where you were when you're like that? You get that punch in the stomach, like what I thought was going to be so big just collapsed.
Well, as I said, over 9 weeks, that punch in the stomach just kept punching.
So one of those
So you just think, oh.
Is that one of those when you wake up in the morning and you don't want to open your eyes?
There was slagging it off on the radio. They were laughing about it in late night shows.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just horrible. I couldn't turn anything on without hearing how pitiful this show was and agreeing with them and realizing the bad mistakes that we'd made, the terrible mistakes we'd made. If he's the ice master, why isn't he on the ice? You know, they're questions that I would have said. But I was so involved with it at the time.
Which, you know, happens in the creative process, but a lot of people hit that wall, especially, you know, your late 30s, early 40s, and you just went from like, I thought I made it, to just a total collapse. And I know that feeling of like, you don't even want to open your eyes in the morning because you just don't want to see the negative, like what are they going to say about it today? But
my youngest son was working in the city of London in stocks and shares and money changing. And my eldest son was working in television, both of whom were taking abuse.
Yeah, it was so big, it was spanned your family, it spanned everywhere.
Our biggest night on television is Saturday night in England, which I was shocked it isn't here. But England, Saturday night television is it. And it was just in your face.
So you couldn't miss it.
You couldn't miss it.
So what did you do? Because a lot of people, and this is kind of, I'd say, goes to the core of what we try to share with the world here, is like, there's that moment now where you can either give up, and you could just say, like, I'm done, like a lot of people would do, probably majority of people, or you find the next step forward. You get out of bed, even though you don't want to get out of bed. You brush your teeth, you brush your hair, you put on your clothes, you go look people in the eyes, and you push forward. And that's, to me, the hardest thing to do, and yet the most important. How did you do that, and what did you do?
Well, I was still editing the shows as well, which didn't really help. The Ice
same
was
show.
the same show while it was going out. So I was about 2 weeks behind. But we had coming up a Royal Variety performance that, I danced in a Royal Variety performance. I choreographed one. I directed one. And
so this was kind of in the can and hadn't come out yet?
No, this hadn't been made. This is made live.
Oh, okay.
This is live for Her Majesty the Queen.
Okay. So there's another big deal that you have. And
it had to be done. And it was my baby.
Did you ever think before that, like, I'm not going to do this, I'm done?
No. This, for me, was, one of the great honors.
And did you think they were going to cancel it? Was there a moment where you're like, oh, shit, they're not going to let me do that based on the other show?
No. It took my mind off what was going badly here.
Right.
I talking about failing. There was one time on it, I was dancing. I'm going back in history here because I just remembered something. Eartha Kitt was this American singer. She was hugely successful, but she was singing When the Moon is in the 7th House from Hair.
Oh, yeah.
And Jupiter aligns with Mars. And it was finger cymbal time. And one of the dancers, Ken, Warwick his name was, had to put we were like this. So she's like that in the front, Ken's like that in the middle, and I'm sort of like that at the bottom. So it looks like she's got 6 arms. At one point, Ken has to pick her up so that now her legs come up, right? I then, at a certain point, have to put my arms around the pair of them and using thighs, because that's your biggest muscle,
and to huge thighs.
Literally lift the pair of them up. And Her Majesty the Queen's there, as I said, finger cymbals, so it's nice and quiet. Every bit of air was expelled out of my ass during the whole time that I'm holding them in the air.
So you just let out giant fart.
It just went, it wasn't let out, it was let out. It just went on as I'm holding, and I just put them.
So you farted in front of the
all
Queen.
All of a sudden, can you imagine? For somebody that is
on TV, and it's live.
Yeah.
That's better than the next failure. I'm sorry, that's a great failure.
Oh.
I mean, how many people could say, I mistakenly farted on live TV right in front of the Queen? So, okay, you've done this show, and you failed, and you failed miserably, and as you said, it's now affecting your family, it's affecting you, but you just pushed forward. You never thought to give up.
Well, the actual, I went and did this, I just remember something else happened. So I'm doing the Royal Variety performance, and I have to walk Her Majesty down the line and introduce her to the acts at the end of the show. So the comedian called Joe Pasquale is on, and Joe Pasquale has got a very high voice like that. And he does old gags. Why did the Mexican throw his wife over the cliff? Tequila! So he's just a silly, silly comedian. He walks on with a camel. Now, we've put a cork up the camel's ass because you don't want it defecating on the stage in front of Her Majesty. Her Majesty's had enough with a fart. She doesn't need to see any crap on the stage. As he gets into the centre, and I can't remember what the gag was with the camel, but the camel farts and the cork goes flying across the stage. At the end of the show, Her Majesty's walking down the line and she comes to Joe Pasquale. She said, "Oh, Mr. Pasquale." She said, "What sort of camel was that?" And he said, "I think it was a dromedary, ma'am." She said, "No, Mr. Pasquale, it was a very naughty camel." She had a great sense of humor.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What an amazing, you had two farts in front of the Queen.
No, it wasn't mine. That
okay,
was
but back to, you're at this low, but you have this hope. And so you're picking yourself up, and I want you to tell me as much about that period of time as you can remember. Your family, you said your kids were getting kind of harassed because of how bad it was failed. It was the most public humiliating failure.
Yeah.
And
but the realization of why it was failing was the most important thing. I think out of things that I've done badly in my life, I've learned more out of them than things that I've done well. Things that I've done well is like a pat on the back and great. The things that haven't worked or you failed at, you try and figure out why. Why didn't I realize this, which is obvious when you now watch it? Why? And you suddenly go, you're caught up in it. You're just caught up in it. And the first thing that flies out of the window is common sense. The first thing is common sense. Just look at everything from a distance, not when you're on top of it and trying to work out the mishagos of it. And for me, that was about, I didn't care. I didn't know anybody in it. I didn't want to know anybody in it. The games didn't really make sense. A lot of that was to do with we were dropped in it by having to lose so many. But the fact was, I didn't care as a viewer.
So, it's interesting, as you say, you were saying you learn from failing, the success is this. And that's the whole point of why I do the show, because I've failed a lot more than I've succeeded. And I think I've had a lot of success, but those are these moments. But I've learned every time you fail, you have to pick yourself up and think, why did I fail? But a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people fail and think, woe is me. Why did this happen to me? As if the world somehow was out to get them, because that's why they must have failed, not looking inside.
Well, nowadays, don't you feel that people, especially younger people, feel as though the world owes them something?
It is we were just talking about this. It's crazy because it's the everybody gets a trophy generation, which I don't understand. It's the, you don't fail. You just, nobody wants to work hard. There's no such thing as like, pick yourself back up. And everybody's just kind of like, they're just going to give it to me. I don't need to work hard.
So we'll get onto this when I talk about American Idol.
Okay.
Because,
so let's go back to this. The essence of this is
I'm now making other programs. And don't forget, I've got a whole team of producers underneath me now.
And you've never thought at this point, because this is what's so important for our audience, is you never thought to give up. You thought to look and say, I don't care what the world thinks. I fucked up. How did I fuck up? I got to fix that, use it going forward, and move on.
Yeah, and also the fact that now I've got to worry more about my department rather than just me and what I want to make.
Right.
So I've now got, 10 or 12 other producers underneath me that I need to find programs for, or have them bring me a program idea that I say, yes, go ahead and make it. Because I am now the producer, the gamekeeper, and everything.
So you're taking this failure and you're saying, I'm analyzing why I did it, and I'm bringing it forward to these 12 other shows that I'm overseeing to make sure they don't make the same mistake. And what happened with those?
They were successful. I mean, we had maybe 2 or 3 other failures, but you are only, when you are in charge of, and I was making 200 hours of television.
Wow.
You are only as good as the worst performing program. It doesn't matter that you're killing it with these top echelon of programs.
Right.
It's this one down here that isn't getting, the percentage that they want, that they're going to look on you as being a failure. Well, hold on, no, there's a ton of other programs that we're making. So it's a difficult position to be in, I've got to say, as the controller of so much. So then I get a phone call from my son, who has now gone out to make gladiators, to assist them make gladiators in Australia. And he's now working for that company that made gladiators in Australia. And he said, Dad, I want you to come out and see this program. It's called Pop Stars. And it's a different form of talent show. So my wife and I decide we're going to go out. And this is now for the millennium, 2000. We go out, and I love Sydney. Australia's a great place. And I watched this television show, and it had the exposure of the audition process with tough judges. And one particularly mean one that would say nasty things, not as bad as we actually did here in America, but you can't sing. Why have you come to audition? You're wasting my time, you're wasting your own time. So we go out to Australia, and I watched this television show. It's an hour long. And I think, I've never seen the audition process before of kids literally auditioning to be on a show with singing. They're either on the show or they come along. And it was just fascinating to watch. I thought, I want to buy this format for LWT. So I negotiate to buy the format, and somebody else has offered, Sky Television has offered money for it. And I list everything that we've done at LWT and what I've done. I said, look, I'm the person to make this. Ex-choreographer, producer, blah, 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 comedy, blah, 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 blah. And they eventually say, okay, Nigel, you can have it. I come back, I call up Simon Fuller, who was the manager of the Spice Girls, and I'd done a number of shows with LWT with the Spice Girls, so I knew him quite well. I said, this is to find a group, 2 boys, 3 girls. There will be 3 judges, one of whom will be a tough guy. I said, I'd love you to manage the group that is chosen.
Interesting.
And he said, oh, okay, I like that idea. He said, only if you take the publicist from my company as one of the judges. And I said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. I said, I'm obviously going to use the record executive who's going to produce the record.
What's the publicist's name?
Nikki Chapman.
Okay.
She was the publicist for Spice Girls, S Club 7. I called Simon Cowell. And I said to Simon, would you consider being a judge? I'd met him numerous years on a program I did called Record of the Year. He had a band called Westlife that generally did very well. And I said, I'd love you to be a judge. And he said, oh, yeah, I'd like that. So now I've got Simon Cowell, Simon Fuller, Nikki Chapman. I go to Polydor Records, Universal, a guy now who runs Universal, Lucian Grange, here runs the whole thing.
I know Lucian.
And
Also from the UK.
I sell the idea of this group to them, and we do a record deal, which again, for London Weekend Television to be doing record deals,
it's uncharted territory.
Uncharted territory.
Never happened.
So everyone's loving it. Simon Cowell pulls out. Now, he's never really admitted why to me in all these years, why he pulled out. But it's my belief that his record company, which was Sony at the point, that said, why on earth
Universal
are we
and Sony?
choosing a band to give to Universal?
Yeah, it's like the two enemies working together.
Big time. So he pulled out. So I then call up another guy who's pretty cruel, fun but cruel, called Jonathan King. And he says yes, and then he's imprisoned.
Oh, no. Talk about
as an accused pedophile. So I'm now stuck with a week to go, and
You're going to shoot in a week now.
yeah, and I'm told you should do it, Nigel.
And this
Because-
is going to be American Idol.
Yeah.
Right.
No.
Oh, it's a precursor to American Idol.
No,
Okay.
yeah, don't even think American Idol. This is Pop Stars.
Okay.
It was created by a lady called Julie Christie in New Zealand.
Got it. Okay.
And was a hit in Australia. So I am now going to do it as the judge. I've auditioned kids all my life as a choreographer.
And you can play an asshole so well.
And
you don't really have to
I'm
pretend.
being the asshole. So now I'm using lines on these poor kids that come in front of me like, you sang all the right notes. Unfortunately, you put them in the wrong order. Which was an old comedy line that I
you'd heard
worked
before.
on a show years before. And I'm now called in our national newspapers, and England have got numerous national newspapers, Nasty Nigel.
Nasty Nigel.
Nasty Nigel. And, you know, as I say, I'm using comedy lines against them. It's, you know, you're auditioning somebody at 9 o'clock in the morning, they're singing, oh, like this with a down. It's really tough to get any energy at this time in the morning, isn't it? And I go, yes. I said, well, don't worry. The only energy you're going to need now is to go home. Thank you very much. Goodbye. And so it was tough, but it was fair. And we put together a group of 5, and they got the fastest selling single of all time in England, and that is including Candle in the Wind by Elton John when Princess Diana passed. So it still holds the record.
What was that group name?
Hearsay.
Hearsay.
They fell apart after about a year, but now Simon Fuller has said, I want Nicky Chapman to look after the group. I don't want to be, I want to do a new program called Your Idol. He said, and what we'll do is we'll just go for one person. It's called Your Idol.
So I'm gonna stop. Was there so you created Pop Stars?
Yeah.
And it was deemed a success.
Huge.
So now you're on the rise again.
Well,
everything's feeling great.
They put it this way: if I went to get a haircut, there'd be a camera there.
Okay, so you're on top of the world. You're now
stupid. Yeah.
Simon Fuller says to you, take your show and adjust it and do it with one person versus a band, which is where you're at, and you say,
I said, well, no, I can't do that. We've got Pop Stars, and that's really successful. I can't leave LWT. I've got a pension there, and you know, I'm successful there. And he said, basically, I will give you a signing on fee, which is like sports. It didn't happen in television. You don't get a signing on fee. And I said, how much?
He wants you to produce and judge.
Direct. Produce, judge.
Yes. It's your show.
Yes,
he's taking it anyway.
Yes. So I said, but this is Pop Stars. All you're doing is changing from a group to a single person. He said, well, no, because we'll do a performance show. Pop Stars was much more, it was darker. It was seeing, agents come out of the woodwork to, it was much more real reality. And he said, I want to make this more show business. He said, I want it to be like when we go for our prime minister's election, it's about two people. And when we get down to the final two, I want a bus going around London with this person's face all over it and a bus going around London. I'm going, oh, that sounds like a great idea and everything. I said, well, I don't know what's going to happen with Screen Time, who are the company that owns the format of Pop Stars.
Right.
He said, well, no one's ever been sued for formats. I said, well, look, I'm still making a program here. You need to be careful. So we talked to Screen Time. Screen Time say, as long as you are not a judge on it, you can do what you like with your format.
Oh, because they don't want...
It's passing off.
Right, I get it.
So Pop Stars is one thing. Your Idol, as it was called then, is something else. So ITV, who are the station that broadcasts it, say, well, what we'll do is we'll do Pop Idol 1 year and then Pop Stars the next year.
Oh, interesting.
So I go, okay. So I decide I'm going to leave LWT and my pension behind, take the signing on fee and go and work for 19, which was Simon Fuller's company. I can't judge it, so we go back to Simon Cowell. We go to Pete Waterman, who's a great songwriter, Nicky Chapman, and a DJ called Dr. Fox. So it's going to be 4 judges. I'm ready to bring 5 people into the room each time. Simon Cowell said, no, I only want 1 person in the room. I said, Simon, we've got hundreds of people out there. This is going to take forever. He said, no, I only want 1 person. I said, but I want 1 person. So we then have to sort out how to just bring down the 500 people here to about 30 in order for a day's shoot, because you can only see about 30, 35. So
did you go outside and like audition outside randomly?
So the 500 we took into different rooms and auditioned them separately, which thank goodness we learned how to do that, which was now called Pop Idol.
Right. On the private.
Before we came to America, because here in America we were getting 45,000 kids a day.
Wow.
So we learned how to do this sort of
like Dodger Stadium filled up each day.
Well, yeah, we were at Cowboy Stadium. Yeah. Pop Idol becomes a big success. And we're down to 2 boys at the end of it. One boy who took about 5 minutes saying his name. Gareth Gates, his name was.
He had a speech impediment.
Until he sang.
Wow.
And then it was perfect.
Those are the most amazing moments.
Why don't you sing your name? Which he said, I never thought about that. But this kid, good looking, stole people's hearts. And remember, my whole thing was find out about the people.
Backstory, because you
find
learned
the backstory.
So this goes back to
this
the failure.
Cares them.
Make sure
and
you
the
care.
same as we did with Pop Stars. Care about them. See them getting drunk. See them say, no, I didn't have anything to drink. Show them drinking. This whole thing was about people. The whole thing was about people. And the same with Pop Idol now.
And that takes us back to your original failure. Which
Totally.
is, had you not gone through that, you never would be at this place where you're like, this show
Absolutely.
is only going to work.
It's about people.
About people.
Yeah.
Because that's what you didn't do the first time.
Correct.
And that's where the failure comes full circle.
Absolutely. And now we've got these 2 people, Gareth Gates and Will Young. Now, Will Young, Simon, one is terribly sort of like this, terribly chap, very, very sort of posh, say. And Simon said to him at one point, he sang a song, and Simon said, that was very average. And for the first time ever, this kid turns around and goes, Simon, I don't think I can agree with you when you said I was average. He said, if I was anything but average. And it's like the whole country went, oh, he turned around to Simon. So now he's got his story. He is now recognized as the kid who spoke back. He's now recognized as the kid with the stutter.
Yep.
And we've now got two people that are voted every week to the top of it.
Wow.
And they're going to be against each other.
That's amazing.
Now, Simon hates this kid that's talked back to him. He's a big fan of Gareth. So now the whole country turns on poor Gareth because Simon supports him, and they've gone for Will Young. It was a really interesting phenomenon.
So you actually created emotion and it came from the show that you learned that if you didn't create any emotion on.
Correct.
You've put an entire country in emotion.
Correct. It's now not just about the singing.
Yep.
It's about the support. And as Simon Fuller said, this was about creating two people like the Prime Minister. Who's going to be your next Prime Minister? Who is going to be your pop idol?
Yep.
And we were texting here in the UK. So there were telephone calls coming in, texts coming in, and postcards coming in. And I said to Simon when he first said, we're going to get the public to vote. I said, well, the judges should do it. He said, no, I want the public deciding. I said, well, that's been done for years. That won't work.
Boy, did it work.
Boy, did it work. So now...
You guys kept the cell phone carriers alive.
And in England, we charge 50 pence.
Per text.
A text.
Yeah.
Which the company was getting.
That's amazing.
So now we get a phone call from America. Evidently, the ratings are enormous. So Rupert Murdoch has now called his daughter, who lives in England. What do you think about this show, Pop Idol? And she said, oh, really? He said, do you think it would work in America? And she said, well, if you take the nasty Englishman, yeah.
She said, if you do take him.
Yeah, it's going to work.
So for those of you who don't know, Rupert Murdoch is, well, just stepped down, but he was the most powerful, again, person in media. Nigel, you're jumping from powerhouse to powerhouse.
Yeah,
he ran all of Fox. He owned Fox, actually, not just ran it. His son now runs it. But Wendy, his daughter, ran all the UK.
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. Wendy was his wife. Whoops, don't want to mix those up. Elizabeth ran all of the UK and was also one of the you get a call from Elizabeth or Rupert. They're buying your show. That's like, you've made it. You're game over.
So we go to America. Simon Cowell, Simon Fuller go to America to talk about Idol. ABC will not take the pitch.
And that's isn't ABC was a Disney show?
Yeah. Fox turn it down. NBC turn it down. Everyone turns it down.
Wow. Why wouldn't they take the pitch? They just said we don't.
No idea. It was a singing show, basically. It was just they just saw it as a singing talent show. And we've got plenty of those. We had Star Search, we had this, we had that. We don't need another one. So now we're hugely successful. The ratings have hit America now, and now Rupert calls up.
So just to make clear, as the show's starting, you're out there trying to pitch to networks, and they're like, they won't even take the pitch. It's just another show. Now you're successful. Now you're getting the most powerful people in the business saying, we want it. Of course. Right.
So we find that Fox have spent all of their summer money, and they haven't got any money. So we might take 7 shows if you can find sponsors for it. So now I'm in 19 offices. And I've got Simon Fuller and his attorney and myself. And it's quite late at night for us. America, it's probably lunchtime or something. And I'm put on the phone to a guy called Rick Rock from PepsiCo, sorry. And Rick Rock, I thought, I wonder if he was in the Flintstones.
I was going to say, it sounds like that.
Isn't it? And he said, okay. He said, well, tell me about your show. And I said, well, it's a vocal talent show. Oh, yeah, we've had a lot of those. I said, yeah. But with this, it is different because, normally if your singer isn't good enough, your judges will say, I'm sorry, it's not right for us today, but
Good luck.
You're wearing a beautiful dress,
Yeah.
or your hair's looking great, or something to sweeten it up. I said, we don't sweeten it up. Simon will say something like, now I know why God created earwax. or you sound like a bagload of cats being thrown off the Empire State Building. I mean, you know, he's going to say these. And the guy said, you're going to tell these singers that they ain't good? I said, yeah, we're telling them they're really lousy. And I've got the attorney, the English attorney going, don't say too much, don't say too he said, well, I don't think Pepsi's going to be interested in telling singers that they're no good. He said, maybe you should talk to Coca-Cola.
And you did.
And we did. And Coca-Cola came on board as a sponsor. And then CAA, the agency here, got Ford Motors involved in it.
Wow.
And it started off by saying, yeah, okay, we're going to do 7 shows.
Was this Kevin Huvain, Brian Lortier, or was this Ron Meyer, Michael Ovitzier?
No, Brian Lord. Yeah.
Yeah, they're great. I love Brian and Kevin.
Yeah. We made more than 7 shows. We did 13 shows, I think, on the first one. And immediately they wanted a special out of Vegas. A week after we finished doing the live shows, they wanted it. So it was a rush out to Vegas, throw this hours show together in Death Valley in Vegas, shoot it outside. I mean, it was just a crazy time. My, what's the name came out, my discs came out of my neck. I was wandering around with an arm up, looking like I wanted to go to the bathroom. Please, miss, can I go to the bathroom? It was a crazy time. And then immediately straight on to season 2. And it was all about, even with Simon, the great thing, people say to me, how come American Idol made so many stars and The Voice doesn't? Because The Voice has some great singers. Yeah. I mean, there's no question, really great singers. It's just a different format. And even with Simon, the focus was on the contestant.
Right.
He would say to them, you stink. It wouldn't be interplay between the judges.
The Voice was much more about the judges.
Yeah. And it's going back to the failure. I want all the concentration on the talent.
That's it.
I want to know their stories. I want to see Carrie Underwood in The Farm. I want to know where she came from. I want to know that Kelly Clarkson was here 2 months ago and failed in Los Angeles and went home, and then we picked her up and brought her back, and now she's going to be the next American Idol. It was incredible because we also had the problem with split. You weren't texting.
Right, you weren't voting.
You just weren't texting in America at this time.
Oh, right.
So we had to teach. Ryan Seacrest is literally there with a phone saying, and this is how you text on your telephone. Amazing when you think it was 2001, that America was not texting in that sense.
Yesterday.
And we couldn't use the phone calls because we couldn't charge for a phone call because it was the
FT.
No, it was the porno lines.
Oh, the 976.
Yeah, whatever they were. And so you call up and say, I'd like to vote for Kelly Clarkson. What are you wearing, little girl? It would have been awful.
Oh, my gosh.
So,
that was the only services that you're saying that you could call through. Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
So we've got Steve Jobs calling up, saying Apple want to get on board. We'll teach them how to do this and do that. And it was literally...
I remember you had that big Apple campaign.
Yeah. The world suddenly changed for us. And we had to worry about voting West Coast and East Coast.
Because of the hours.
Because in England, we literally came on the air 2 hours after the show had finished with the result. So here we had to split the nights.
So I'll ask you a question and before we move on, because this is really... So you've taken this failures in the past and you've put it all towards the present. And you're now on top of the world. You've created American Idol or co-created American Idol. And you literally have the #1 show on TV. Not just a show. You've created a cultural phenomenon that's changed not just TV, but the music business, talent show, everything as we know it around that.
The president of the Academy said you could be justified in talking about American television as before American Idol and after American Idol.
I agree with him. I mean,
Because your reality shows, there weren't that many, if any.
No, we had, because I remember, because I was managing Bob Evans at the time, and I was pitching a reality show with him. And prior to that, all we had was Simple Life, because I hired Bun and Murray to produce Bob Evans' show that
Simple
ABC
Life came
turned
on
down.
after American Idol.
So we didn't even, Simple Life was technically the first reality show.
Right,
so you were even before that.
Yeah. Survivor beat us.
Yes, there was, but Survivor was a.
And the real life. Was it the real life something?
You talking about MTV?
No,
they had the one on MTV where they all lived together in a room. Real World.
Real World.
Yes, that was on. So anyway, not to interject.
While you talk about Andrea, she immediately gets on board with American Idol and wants another show that Fuller's gone in and sold and pitched called All American Girl.
All American.
All right. So now we've got this huge success, and I guess he could have sold anything, anywhere, you know. So All American Girl. So I say, well, he said, I want you to go in, and I said, well, what is All American Girl? He said, well, just make a show with, you know, all American girls and test them for intelligence, cooking, talent, singing, dancing, whatever you want to do. So we go in, and I bring over another 2 English producers, one of whom now is the producer of Dancing with the Stars, really good producer, and the other is the producer of The Masked Singer. So they've been hugely successful here. So they come over and they say, what's the format? I said, I have no idea. I don't know how he even sold it. There isn't a format here. But it's intelligence, talent, cooking. How good do they make an apple pie? I said, think parochial, you know, think. So they put together a little intelligence quiz, one of which the questions was, what 2 countries border America? I think possibly the worst answer we got was California and France.
No, you did not.
California and France. And at that point, it went down to cooking and talent. And it just became a talent show, really. It failed miserably. They put it out at 11 o'clock on a sort of Saturday night. They shut it down quickly. So with all of the success of American Idol, we have now got this complete and utter failure of All American Girl.
So you're at the peak of your, like, just everything's just, you could sell, as you said, you could sell anything, anywhere. You've changed television, you've changed music, you've changed everything. Next show that comes out, boom, total failure.
Yeah.
And there's an old saying I know of is you're only as good as your last movie, or you're only as good as your last show. Did that affect you, or was Idol so big that
I was moving straight into Idol season 2. So it was Conrad James, I'm so sorry. Come and join us on American Idol season 2 while you're here.
Right.
So they came on and did that. We start, and it was the season of Ruben Studdard and Clay Aiken.
Oh, yeah.
Tall Clay, chubby Ruben, spaghetti and the meatball, we used to call them.
While you're on this, one of the things you mentioned earlier that was really important is you said one of the things that you did in season 1 Idol, and I'm carried through, which I saw, but you just said it, as you were talking about it, is you showed these people, so important to show them failing a month before in this barn, whatever, in this bar failing, and then now they're the Idol. Like, tell me more about that, because it seems like, to me, what was so about Idol, why people love it,
it's the American dream, for goodness sake.
It's the story of failure.
But you've forgotten what the American dream is on television.
Yeah.
And that is, you're a burger flipper one day, you're a big star the next day. And it was introducing people and their talent. It's a springboard. There's no guarantee you're going to be successful after that program is over.
Yeah.
So it is just...
But isn't it
bringing back the American dream to America?
But aren't you telling, I mean, the way I see it is I'm watching a story of people who fail, but they love what they do so much, meaning, singers, that they don't give up.
They're humiliated to a certain degree, which is why America didn't really like Simon Cowell in that first season. We had to put on a security team because there was a father outside New York hotel where we were auditioning with a baseball bat threatening to take Simon out.
So just to me,
when you say they failed to get on the program. So that's part of it as well. Because don't forget, in those days, we used to show the really bad ones.
I remember the
William
lines.
Hung. Do you remember William Hung? Failed so badly, could not sing in tune, then was successful because he put out a really out of tune Christmas record that everybody bought.
I remember he failed. You guys showed this kid who literally couldn't sing a note. If this is the one I remember, skinny guy.
Well, she bangs. He sang.
Yes, that's
Asian,
right.
This little Asian.
Yeah, skinny Asian guy. I remember, and he couldn't sing.
Yeah.
And you guys put him out on a kind of pedestal to be like, look at how awful this person is.
See, when we first started, the first few seasons, people believed they could sing. Their parents had told them they're great singers, or their friends had told them. Later on, as we got into like seasons 7 and 8, college kids had come along pretending they couldn't sing just to get on the show. And there's a huge difference, wandering out looking like the Statue of Liberty, getting to the center of the room and someone would just go, no thanks. They'd turn around and walk straight out. I mean, we would use those because they were fun.
Right.
But there was no reason. You want people to believe that they can sing. That's when they put their heart into it and are really terrible.
So what does that tell you, kind of, because to me, when I look at that and I look at Idol, it's the epitome of like, because to want to be a singer and to push through that dream, that's something that you have to just believe so much in yourself and never give up, because you're told, like being an actor, no all the time.
Yeah.
And you're failing every day over and over and over and over. And, you're still doing it. And in Idol, oftentimes, I think you had people who spent their whole lives being told, no, you're a failure, right? And then you're turning them into, you're either telling them, yes, you are a failure, or no, you're amazing.
Yes and no. I don't think a lot of them never looked on themselves as a failure. They believed they were rude, a lot of them. We cut a lot of the rudeness out. I mean, vile stuff, a lot.
Interesting.
That they become, they're tough and they're hardened.
They're hardened, but if they were coming on that show, they were, to that point in time, they had failed at what they wanted to do because they're trying to use the show to make it.
A lot of them were young. We were taking 16-year-olds.
That's true. I guess you're.
What
was the oldest person you had on Idol that made it?
I suppose Larry, pants on the ground guy. Can't remember how old he was, but it was just a fun song that he'd written that we said, okay, we'll put him on.
But did he make it? What's the oldest person became successful off of Idol?
No, I couldn't tell you right. It was 16 to 29, I think, was our.
So like a 29-year-old, generally, who has not made it in singing, is not expected to make it. But did you have any 28 or 29-year-old that became...
Again, you say that, and I think you're wrong. Just that was our rule. Susan Boyle was in her late 40s, early 50s when she did Got Talent and became a big star out of that. So exposure is the one thing that I truly believe in. Give as many people as possible the opportunity of showing the world who they are on whatever program, whether it's an inventor, whether it's a singer, whether it's a dancer, whether it's a choreographer. I mean, these choreographers that I had on So You Think You Can Dance had been successful in their own right. When they came on that, it was the exposure that turned them into superstars,
So let's actually move maybe, so American Idol, crushing it.
Well, yeah, but season 2 was doing really well until my heart attack.
Oh, please tell me.
So
give me the details.
I was editing season 2 in the edit suite with Bill Durand.
How old were you at this point?
51.
Okay.
And heart attack.
So you just collapsed?
Not really. I just felt like I had indigestion. And I'd had to lie down, and I was still shouting out, take 2 frames out of there. They joke about it. They put up Nigel Lythgoe's cardiac suite on the edit. So it all happened in 1 year. It happened 2003. So it was heart attack. I got through that very quickly. Was back at work in about 10 days. Did season 2. Season 3, we go to Hawaii. Come out of the auditions in Hawaii and my appendix explodes. I get peritonitis. They remove 17 foot of intestine. and my wife divorces me, all in 1 year. So I lost the back of my heart, 17 foot of intestine and a wife, and I miss my intestine.
Okay, so this is a really good perspective on life, because here you are, probably, as most of us would be, you've spent your whole career to get here.
Oh,
You've hit the point that anybody, the biggest
success and financially ridiculous. I earned in 4 weeks what I earned in a year in England.
And you're now also, like you said, you've changed television. You're the person that's changed television. You can get any show made. You've hit everything you probably ever thought you would, and then some. Now you've had a heart attack, your wife leaves you, you have your gallbladder removed. And tell me at that point.
No, gallbladder was only 3 months ago.
Oh, sorry, I meant your appendix. I'm thinking gallbladder, which we'll come to.
It exploded.
So where are you? Where's your head now? Like you think life is so important because I know how I was, when I had financial success and then all of a sudden realized, wait a minute, there's this other stuff.
Everyone thought I was dying, to be frank with you. People were flying in from England to say goodbye to me.
Did you think you were dying?
Yes. It was 7 weeks nil by mouth, lying in Cedars-Sinai. And yeah, I was only starting to believe it because other people were saying, just want to say goodbye, and it's been really lovely knowing you. And I'm going,
Jesus.
Oh, all right.
So it's an interesting play, because that goes into a failure in a way, which is like, was there ever a moment where you were feeling like, I failed at paying attention to life because I was so focused on work, or were you content, or what were you feeling?
Well, no, there's a whole reflection that comes later on in life, really, of realizing, going way back to choreographing, that I choreographed my life away at one point where I wasn't really seeing my children. I wasn't going on holiday with my kids and my family because I was too busy choreographing shows. I was sending them to private schools, trying to make the money up to pay for that. So there's a whole crisis during that choreographing.
Did you realize this as you were going through the health scare?
Yeah.
And so you started to have regrets about not being there as much for your family?
Yeah.
And tell me about that. Did you feel like you failed as a dad? Did you feel like, what was it that you...
Well, it balanced itself. I think that's protection. It balances itself because you feel as though you're a failure because you've not been with your kids, but you've made the money so that your kids could go to good schools. And so it sort of balances itself.
So you're laying in this hospital bed now, and you're starting to believe, because of all your wonderful friends telling you, nice to know you.
No, but flying in, it's not just like a telephone call. We just want to see him. Can we come into the...
So you're laying there, and you're starting to believe that this may be it. And is this all of a sudden, you're feeling guilt about kids? What do you tell me what you're feeling? Because I think that's the thing that's like...
I don't think it's guilt. I just think it was, I suppose, the very fact that I'd created this pinnacle of my life. It had happened. I can't say I created it. I was lucky enough to...
You created it, but
no, I was lucky enough to be, It was a lot of luck. And then, you need the luck, and then you need the talent to stay there, and everything else. And you need the luck not to be found out.
I always say the same thing, but you know what? It's better to be lucky than smart.
Yeah. And then to have it all taken away.
And tell me at that moment. So this has all been taken away, because if you're not there, then that success doesn't matter. What's going through your head? Obviously, your family's going through your head. What was the hardest thing for you, and what did you struggle with, and what did you have to come through? Because that, to me, is like, you can't compare any failure to, I might be dying, right?
I missed an American Idol Christmas show, and it really pissed me off that someone else was going to be doing it.
Was that your biggest regret then?
Yes.
So you knew you were in the right place. So you have the ultimate success, and then you have this, like, the craziest of setbacks you can have, which is a super health scare.
Yes.
But yet you're in the right spot, because the only thing you're most annoyed about is that
missing a show.
You missed a show. But you're also saying you had to kind of check yourself of, like, thinking back when you were doing a lot of choreographing and trying to put, I'll call it food on the table, so to speak. But Bunny,
but you get through it because, I mean, the Japanese have got a great saying. I'm sure you know it. You fall down 8 times, pick yourself up 9 times.
Yeah.
It's what life is. It's not just about show business. It's about everything else that happens in life. You've got to
say life is the shit that happens when you're waiting for life to happen.
And certainly when you've gotten through, John Lennon said something like that. Life passes you by while you're busy doing other things, Certainly, from attempting to commit suicide back then, I always swore that I was going to have the best life that I could make for myself after getting through that. And I had. I got 2 wonderful boys. I'd got, at that point, 4 grandchildren, and still a wife at that point. But I was determined to get through it and move on. And I was loving Idol. I was getting to see America. We were going to every single city. We were meeting great, talented people. Couldn't wait to get back, which I did. And when I got back, Simon Fuller said, "Why don't we do this for dance? You've done it for singing, let's do it for dance." And I said, that'll never work. There were no dancing shows on American television.
Right.
No one was really interested in dance. A bit like my own country of the UK, dancing for men had a stigma attached to it. If you were a dancer, you were obviously gay, and it put a lot of people off dancing. And I said, I don't see it working. He said, well, think about it. Think of trying to put together a format. I said, all right. I didn't bother. And it was like 6 months later, we went out to Cabo. And Simon said, I just want you to come out, spend a weekend here, and think about a dancing program. So I thought, well, I'd like the weekend in Cabo. That'll be nice. So I went down to the bottom of the garden. It was beautiful. He rented a great house. Took a bottle of Johnny Walker Black Label with me. Came back with half a bottle of Johnny Walker Black Label and the idea of a dance format. It wasn't called So You Think You Could Dance at that point. That came from probably one of the greatest executive producers I've worked with, called Mike Darnell, who was at Fox, that worked really hard with us on American Idol. And he said, let's call it So You Think You Can Dance. Don't make it as difficult as you're making it with this whole judging system, which had based on the Olympic Games.
Right.
He said, just Idol was successful because it was simple. The most votes stayed on, the person with the least votes off. Just do it like that. And so, sure enough, So You Think You Can Dance was born. And again, thank goodness, successful. And it's just going into season 18 as we speak now. Unfortunately, my failure is they no longer want me as a judge on my own program.
And when did that
failed. That happened last year.
So going back to the beginning of this, though, so you're at the top of the world. You go through a life-changing event. You're reevaluating everything. And you come out of the reevaluation, health scare, a life scare, but you get stronger from that. You come out and you take what most would argue you can't get more success than this, and you actually create more success through So You Think You Can Dance. And you change dancing for the whole world, because as you said prior to that, the idea of dancing on TV was like there were stigmas with it. And if someone had pitched me that idea, I was, in reality, as 45 shows, I would never think, oh yeah, or a dance show is going to work. And yet that didn't just work. It once again changed the face of television.
I felt the same thing. I didn't think it would work. So I didn't think voting would work on American Idol. I didn't think dance would work on television. So anything Simon Fuller says that I don't believe in is going to be a huge success.
But
what happened with dance, which I'm really, really happy with, is we saw so many kids that were thrown out of their homes by their father because they wanted to be a dancer. And after several years of it being out on the air, dads have been coming up and saying, I didn't realize how athletic you needed to be a dancer. And I'm really supportive of my son now, and he's really good. And also they said to me, you can't mix street dancing with formally trained dancers. And I was determined to do that. They said, well, it's not fair because formally trained dancers have really worked hard at dancing. And I said, well, no, the street kids have worked harder, probably, because they're in their bedrooms articulating every single joint to do what they do, not having the financial awareness to go and take lessons. They're now being given the opportunity of having lessons and learning about core and how to control their bodies even more. And they are so inventive and creative. And over the years, that's proven so good now because the dancers are doing triple tours and things like this that Nijinsky and Nureyev and Baryshnikov have never done a triple tour. That's jumping in the air and turning round
3 times.
3 times. That's defying gravity.
Yeah, it sounds impossible.
It's it's like these great basketball players that actually jumped up and then just go that bit further.
Yeah.
That you go, how did that happen? It's incredible.
So that must be for you, because going back to your roots as a dancer, as a 10-year-old or 11-year-old, you went to your dad and said, I want to dance. And, as you say, he was a longshoreman, so it was kind of a you want to do what? And now you're giving the world a looking glass into a field that is a lot of failure, and you have to love it, because having been married to a professional ballerina, I know it's not for the money in dancing. There's almost no money in it. I think they were making $40,000 a year as professional dancers.
You have to love it.
You have to love it.
And you're turned down. Talk about failures.
Yep.
I mean, I don't look on being turned down, and I say this to kids all the time. You are not failing. You are not right for what the person that's auditioning you wants at this point. That's not your failure.
Right. But to a kid whose life is dancing, they're not doing it for the money, that is failing in their mind.
It shouldn't be, because that would make them stop. That is just, a stumbling block.
But isn't that, so that's kind of what this show is about, is it a stumbling block, or is it not that people who are successful at anything, dancing, singing, producing, movies, finance, they fail, they get up, they fail, they get up. And that's what dancing is. I think it's an ultimate example of that, because you're told all the time you're not good enough. And winning in dancing isn't like, oh, I'm going to be a famous singer and make $20 million a year. Winning in dancing is, maybe I'll be the prima ballerina and make $65,000
It's just getting
this
a
year.
job, Ryan. It's just getting a job.
Yeah.
In truth. And what's weird about it is the choreographer may love you for this particular job, and you go back to them and say, hi, how are you? And they say, fine, but you're not right for this job.
Right.
And that's why I don't class it as a failure. It's you put yourself on the line all the time. And with dancers, it becomes so emotional. You're offering your soul up each time and being accepted or turned down. You can't class it as failure. Failing isn't failing in that sense. Failing is, and you should never even class, I hate the word failure. No, it's
You hate our podcast.
It's a stupid word, because you're not failing. You haven't been successful. Not being successful is not failing. Failing is when you do something terrible or you give up. That's failing. If you give up. And why would you ever give up?
Well, our quote here in the show is the Man in the Arena show, Roosevelt's Man in the Arena, which I don't know if you know in the quote, but he talks about, really the more or less what he says is there's only 2 types of people. The man who errs short time and time again. He basically says who fails time and time again, and yet never stops. And he kind of says, but it's better to be that man that has covered in dust and marred in sweat and have come short and tried time and time again and failed, than to be a cold and timid soul that knows neither the sweetness of victory or the darkness of defeat.
There's many of those. It's the man that aims for 1,000 and gets 999 and fails, if you will, is far better off than the guy that aimed at 100 and succeeded in 100.
I think it was Edison, who we talked about this last time. He had a very famous quote, and I'll mess up on the numbers, but it was something like when he finally invented the light bulb, and he had spent years trying to do it, and they said, how does it feel to invent the light bulb? He said, I didn't invent the light bulb. I just showed you 9,999 ways not to do it.
Yeah.
Because, he literally spent, he had the exact number down too. I think it was like 9,876 ways not to do
failed.
it. Right. But in his mind, he was saying, I did fail. I just failed 9,876 times.
No, he succeeded.
Right. But I think the difference in humanity is, do you give up or do you not give up?
Well,
and that's what the question is.
If he'd have given up,
yep,
we'd have never have had the light bulb.
Right.
And he would have failed.
Right.
He didn't fail.
Well, I guess it comes a question of what point he failed and failed and failed, but never stopped failing till he succeeded. That's the way I look at it.
Okay. I look on it that he didn't fail.
We're saying one and the same thing. So let me ask you. So
it's a totally different mental attitude.
Well, to me, I think the reason we're using the word failure is, and the reason we focus on failure is a lot of people are just so disheartened with the world today, right? And it's everything's all about Instagram and look how pretty this person is, and all the influencers are so amazing, and they're rich and famous and everything's great, and look, everybody's life is perfect. Like, I'm sure coming on this show, most people assume, Nigel, he's British and dresses well and did American Idol, and so you think you can dance, and what a privileged guy who just had tons of success, right? And now after hearing this, they are like, wow, look at these trials and tribulations. And most people don't have that stamina to just not give up and not give in, right? And just fight through it. And I think part of this is for those people who are just at that brink where they're about to give up and they feel like they're a failure. Maybe they haven't failed, but they feel like they're a failure. They've been told they're a failure.
Well, that's why I say don't use the word failure until you give up.
Right. Well, this is for those people.
You can be unsuccessful.
Right. I agree with you, but this was really, there's so many people out there who are on that brink because the world is so hard today.
And if they give up, they're a failure.
Correct. And so part of this is that person who's right about to do it, and they're like, ooh, this is interesting. What's this thing about failure? Because they feel like they're about to be that. And I want them to hear this and use these stories to say,
let me tell
I'm not giving up.
Okay, let me tell you, this is not a joke. This is a really interesting story that I heard. A little boy was auditioning in his school play for a number of parts.
Right.
And his mum was scared stiff because he wasn't a particularly talented little boy.
Right.
And she knew he wasn't really going to be successful.
Right.
Not that he was going to be a failure.
Right.
He wasn't going to be successful. And she was scared about picking him up that day at school because she knew he was going to be really upset. She drives up to the school. He comes out of school bouncing, happy, cheerful. And she said, oh, what happened? He said, I got the part of sitting in the audience and applauding and cheering.
That's great.
And she said, fabulous. And he was so happy because he'd been given a part.
Right. No, it's all perspective.
It's perspective.
And presentation.
Absolutely.
I don't disagree, and that's part of what this show is to give people the perspective of like, oh wow, I get to see this from Nigel's eyes, where most people look and go, oh, it's unobtainable, it's so successful, and yet the difference between success and failure is this fine, fine line.
Well, I would have been a failure if I'd have succeeded when I was 21 years of age.
Yep. And you would have been a failure.
There wouldn't have been 5 beautiful grandchildren on this planet, 2 lovely sons. You may never have seen American Idol. Some of you might be saying, thank God.
You never would have seen So You Think You Can Dance.
Or lots of other things or programs or anything that I've touched in my life.
Let me ask you a question that...
So that's a failure. That would have been a failure. If I'd have been successful, I'd have been a failure.
I want to come back to that because I want to recap the failures, but there's something that's recently happened. So you create this just, again, incredible show. You've now redefined the industry again with So You Think You Can Dance. And it's season 18 now, you said? So something happens in season 16?
No, season 17, I wasn't asked to be a judge anymore.
But it's your show.
Yeah.
And so tell us about that, because that's got to be hard.
Well, I was just told basically, although it's my format, my creation, I don't own the show.
Right, because the network pays for it, so they own it always, on every show.
So I was told they wanted to be more diverse with the judges. And I said, you can't get more diverse than an old English, white, heterosexual, multimillionaire talking about it. That's surely down into the 1%.
Did you actually
bracket.
say that to them? And they probably didn't laugh at it.
They didn't laugh.
No. I think it's hilarious. So that must have felt like total shit.
Well, it wasn't, yeah.
I mean, it's your show. I get it. You don't own it because nobody owns a show but the network.
It was, for me, a little worse than that. The person that they chose to replace me was then fired. And the person that then replaced that person didn't really come from a dance background and was known as a dance enthusiast. So the whole thing for me with So You Think You Can Dance and judging was not just about judging how they dance now, but how to help them improve, how to help them get better.
That kind of got lost with this new judge.
It sort of the whole ethos got lost a little bit because So You Think You Can Dance was not just about entertainment, it was about being educational with it. I was always insistent that if somebody did a pirouette, that maybe some of the public didn't know what a pirouette was. So I would get the judges to say, when you did your pirouette, those beautiful spins, when you did that jeté, how you leapt into the air. So you were educating in a way that wasn't looking down on your audience.
Right.
And it was really important to me that we were dealing with major social issues as well. They went into homophobia, they went into addiction. These brilliant choreographers had 1 minute and 45 seconds to get over these incredible issues that you would not normally be talking about in primetime television entertainment program. So it was really important that dance became something more than dance. This wasn't a dance show. And American Idol wasn't a singing show. It was about everything that I said I learned. It was about people and about issues. And that came from being not a failure, but unsuccessful with the program.
And, I would say, it goes to the saying of you haven't tried if you haven't failed. But it's the definition of failure. But so it's 18 years running. They take you off your own show, which obviously has got to be a punch in the gut.
I felt like a failure. No, I didn't mean that. Yes.
But it sounds like what you're more disappointed about, I would say, is that you feel like you're kind of failing. They're failing the dance world because they took out you. This, as you said, wasn't a dance show. It was a human show that used dance and used that world to help people mentally and with all kinds of issues that they didn't prior have a platform for that you gave them. And you feel a little bit like that's being lost now in the format.
Yeah, I hope it won't be. I haven't seen where the format is going this year yet. I'm just happy to be frank with you that dance is still being represented on television. It is with Dancing with the Stars, thank goodness, and hopefully with So You Think You Can Dance. So I'll always support it from that point of view.
And is there anything you want to share about how you feel right now about that show? Because it's kind of rough and raw and new. It's, you said it was a season old that this happened. What would you share as a life lesson from that if you could?
I was extremely jealous that I was sitting at home and not being there. And especially as a dear friend was there, Twitch, who then a couple of months later after this program took his own life.
Sorry.
And then you say, I'm so happy it didn't happen to me, that I was unsuccessful at it, because I think suicide is, we need to take much better care of people because they only see the dark side of life.
Yep.
Like failure is a dark side of life. Unsuccessful is lighter. And consequently, that's why I say I'll always err towards being unsuccessful. And we need to take greater care and let people know that we care for them. Well, and that they are not alone and they don't have all of the issues and pressures that they think they have on them.
That's why, Nigel, we, not to get too deep on it, but why we use failure. Because, people are scared to say I failed. People are scared to admit they failed. And so, yes, it's much easier to say, well, I was unsuccessful at that. But the reality is, I remember when Relativity, the studio that I had built from scratch, 15 years running, when this hostile takeover happened, and I had to put it into a Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and I was fighting for 2 years to get it back. And one of the weapons hedge funds use are press. And they have big, deep pockets. These are $60 billion hedge funds with very deep press connections. And every day, the same story, negative story, was being written about me because they wanted to take power away from me, being able to fight them in court. So much so that I made a joke on the last podcast we did that it wasn't a joke. Mel Gibson actually called me and said, "You're getting worse press than I did. And I don't even know what you did, but build a multi-billion-dollar business that everybody wants to steal."
Sure.
And it was the same story over and over. And I remember the feeling for about a year, because this was a year in court. Every morning I woke up, I didn't want to get out of bed. Mm-hmm. I had the covers here. I woke up with that pit in my stomach. It was like, but I forced myself to. And it was like...
Did you have friends that rallied around you?
Very few. It's interesting. I looked at the people who rallied around me that I expected not to.
Right.
And the people who didn't that I expected to. And it was a very interesting life lesson. And it's changed my whole perspective on who I surround myself with now.
Yeah.
I mean, as you know, we spend a lot of social time together, like family, friends, like it's interesting when you really learn who cares, and why they're there. But more important than that was just that feeling that I remember thinking, this is the worst feeling. This is worse than physical pain, and worse than any physical pain I could possibly imagine. And yet, when I look back at what I felt so bad about, like, I think, what was it I felt so bad about?
Yeah.
Was it that some newspaper somewhere was writing about me in Hollywood, and oh no, I'd only made this much money, and now I was gonna have to fight in bankruptcy court to try and get this company back that frankly I just could walk away from anyway. And, it wasn't about my health, and it wasn't about my kids' health, and it wasn't about, I wasn't going homeless. And yet it felt like the world was ending to me. Yeah. And I think back now and go, those things that I thought were so important were so unimportant. And I spent so much time, I didn't per se attempt to commit suicide, but I was in my head going I don't know if I want to live. And now I look back and I'm like, it's the stupidest thing I could have ever, like these fake people. And that's the only people that really were reading this stuff or even cared to read it, right? Are fake people who had time enough to read gossip, basically. And I have 2 beautiful children and a beautiful family and great friends. And that's life. But I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And that's part of why I say it's failure, because I woke up every day feeling like a failure. I didn't say I failed, but I felt like a failure.
Let me ask you a question then.
Yeah.
Straight question. Ryan Kavanaugh, are you a failure?
No, I am not a failure, but I have failed.
Have you been unsuccessful?
Yes, but I've also failed a million times. So what we say is, success has many fathers and failure has none. And this show is a place where failure has a father. And I'm here.
We have success as many parents, failures an orphan is what
right.
in
so
England
here, well, the whole point of failure, our show is
to show people
failure has a home.
But to show people also that they're not failures.
Right.
They may have been unsuccessful, but you are not a failure until the end of your life.
Correct. That's the point of this is people who think they might be failing or are worried they're failing, they need to understand it's your choice to stand up again. And by the way,
there are many doors that open in your life.
Correct.
Many doors. And I found that, you know, even if you're not sure that you're capable of going through that door, go through it. And then find out you're incapable of doing something, but go through it, because then then the luck kicks in. Then the universe kicks in and helps you, and that's what's really interesting. Your life can change in many directions.
So I always say, if you poke a hole in a big enough hole that just a little light can come through, then the universe will do the rest. But you got to poke that hole, and in every way, you poke as many holes as you can. You know,
but there's something I've always said, and with performers as well. When kids come and audition, we've all got a little light inside us, and I don't know where the switch is. You've got to find your own. But the light comes on, and through your eyes and through your performance and everything, that light comes on, or it doesn't. And it's there. That switch is there, and so many people don't find that switch. That's the first thing you need to do. Come alive within yourself.
It's almost like you connect to an energy. That I don't know how to explain it, because I feel it in business sometimes.
It's
I feel
in the
it in
eyes
a
as well.
speech.
It's in
I feel it
people's
in
eyes.
You can see it. Like you've connected to this whatever energy field, or you haven't. And if you connect, whether it's dancing, singing, giving a talk, business,
just
negotiating,
life. Just
life. That light is going to come in. Right. And
I think it's in there. You see, I don't think people don't realize that it's there, and they don't let it out.
But you know, it's interesting because it goes back to what you were talking about with me. I look at what happened with my studio after 15 years and being front page every day, most powerful man in Hollywood, you know, $1 billion producer, showman of the year, to like this every day being beat up and like, this guy's terrible, blah, blah, blah. And I look and I think, so had that continued, you know, I would have been still on a plane 278 days a year, in China for half the year, in India for other parts, in speeches, on meetings, home at, 8 p.m. and back at work at 5 a.m. And instead, now, I'm home for dinner, as you know, with my kids every night. I spend my time with my parents and my close friends. I don't,
How many wives?
A number. I've kind of lost count, but they're all friends. As you know, they come for dinner all the time together. I wouldn't have had that. And to me, my most successful thing, as you feel the same, is my children. And like, I look and go, how could I ever?
My two boys fell out very, very badly a number of years ago, for about 3 years. And I tried to bring them back together, and I started to fall out with them because I was trying to bring them together and they didn't want it. And I was given the wonderful, wonderful honor of getting a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
I was there, if you remember.
And I said to my boys, I need a speech. Somebody needs to speak about me. I would like the pair of you to write something and be there for me and do it. They got together to write the speech, which was pretty nasty. It was
funny. I remember they were they got your humor.
They were a little cruel to me. It brought them together. And they are still great friends now, and great siblings, and they love each other. And that meant more to me on that day than a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, because you suddenly get your priorities right. Every now and again. And that's the big thing about being unsuccessful. When you sit down and work out, why was I unsuccessful? And you realize there's no common sense involved in what you did, or you got focused in the wrong area. And you just work out for yourself so that it doesn't happen again.
I always say, make mistakes, just don't make the same mistake. Because if you're not making mistakes, you're not trying. Like you and I have a show together right now, So You Think You Can Fight. And, we're honing it, and I think it's going to be a huge show, right? But we gotta break some eggs making it, right? It's just the way it goes. It's the same as any other show or any other field, or like you said, your family got brought together in a very unique way. Most people go, you got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. That's incredible. By the way, congratulations again.
Thank you.
I don't know how many there are, but it's obviously an incredible honor. But what you remember is that brought your kids back together. And that's where I've gotten in my life is, it's thinking about kids, parents, friends. So tell me, if you had to kind of look back on your life now, and obviously you got a lot more to go, and hopefully the next chapter will be our show.
What's it called again?
So You Think You Can Fight.
There you go. Remember that.
You heard it here, and it will be a big show.
So you think you can fight or fart your way to success?
Maybe we should change it to Fart Your Way to Success. You know, you were 21. You said you tried to kill yourself. You failed at that. Had that not happened, that changed your whole life revelation and where you were going. You went and failed at a show, which you thought was going to be the pinnacle of the top of your life. And that gave you all the things that you then later used to make American Idol. And So You Think You Can Dance. You had a heart attack, and, your what do you say, your... the appendix exploded and your wife left. Peritonitis. You were going through, basically people thought you thought you might be dying, and that led you to a whole life revelation of focusing on your kids more, and kind of also just going back to realizing how much you loved what you were doing.
Yeah.
And what would you say to the world when, like, they bring up, and there's so many people today feel like they're failing. So many people feel like that they can't get back up. What life advice would you give based on that?
It's a tough one to give anybody advice, to be honest with you, in any situation, apart from saying there is no failure while you are still alive. There is no failure. There is people being unsuccessful, and maybe yourself being unsuccessful, but that's not a failure. Find some other avenue. There are many roads that lead to Rome, they used to say. And there are many roads that lead to success. So because that road didn't work for you, try another road, another avenue. Everybody has a talent that sometimes they don't discover. I'd love to know who the parent was that gave their son, Michelangelo, a hammer and a chisel and said, go and knock something up. Who would have dreamt that this kid could go out there and create the beauty that he eventually did with a hammer and a chisel and a block of marble? Who knows what you are capable of? Because sometimes you don't know what you're capable of. I, as a tap dancer out of Liverpool, had no idea I was capable of achieving what I've achieved. And even at 21, when I thought, that's it, I'm a failure. Thank goodness I failed at that. Because if I hadn't have done, certainly my family would be in a different place. They wouldn't be here. That's what would have happened to them. So I'm really grateful that something inside of me kept me going. And you can always find something inside of yourselves that will just help you move on. Failure is just a bad word. I just dislike the word failure. Love this podcast. Hate the word failure.
It's okay. Listen, that's part of what we're here for, is to embrace/hate. I mean, when I say it, it's embrace the fact that you're going to trip. Call it failure, or say, I'm never going to fail. But whatever you call it.
You're always going to fail.
Right.
You're always going to be.
But you're not a failure.
You're always going to be unsuccessful.
Yep.
But you do not have to be a failure.
Do you think we should change that? We were originally going to call it Dare to Fail.
No.
You like the name?
Yeah.
Okay.
Failure is perfect.
Okay.
Just deny it.
Yeah.
And deny it in yourself.
But here's where I'll deny it is there's so many points in my life.
Are you a failure now?
No, but there's so many points where I thought I was. If you had asked me at certain points, I'd say yes. Right now, I'm a failure.
Right.
But not right now. Because
so you would have been wrong.
You're right.
Right.
But that's the point, is looking back and saying, I didn't fail. Life gave me that because I needed it to get to the next step of where I was going to be. I never knew what that was going to be.
I think that's the most important thing, and the best advice you can give to anybody is that there are other avenues. It's because you've been unsuccessful at this one thing doesn't mean you're going to be unsuccessful at that or that or that or that. And that's where we've been successful. When we've been unsuccessful, we've moved on to success.
Yeah.
And that's all you can ever teach anybody, is that the universe provides, even when you're not expecting it. It provides.
As long as you push forward, it will do the rest, right? And you sometimes in the darkest moment, you think, why did that happen? It's so bad. And then you just got to move forward and take that next step.
Yeah.
And you'll realize at some point that had to happen.
Don't expect things to happen for you.
No.
You make things happen. Find that light switch, turn it on. The magic is inside each and every one of us. And I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about the magic inside us.
Coming from the guy who's arguably made more stars than anybody in this world. Dancers, singers.
I think God did that.
Now you're getting into religion.
Depends which God you're talking about.
Well, Nigel, it's been such a pleasure having you, and I hope you'll come back, and maybe even we'll do a show where we can let the audience send in questions, because I'm sure, based on this, that people are going to want to know more. You've really given people an insight into a world that I think so many don't see, and make it relatable. And
Yeah.
I really would hope that I think audience members would want to send in questions for you, and we can ask them.
And keep a good sense of humor.
Always.
Good sense of humor for me is just as important as, people say, keep love in your heart. Keep a good sense of humor.
All right, it's a wrap.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Nigel, thank you.
Thank you.